Today we're going to talk about something that is probably the most important subject there is in all of astrology. And this is the dignities. Those of you who keep staring at my left eye, it's pink eye.
Oh, you got pink eye?
So yeah, so that's what I got. It's ever since I got the cataract operations, well, my moon is elevated. And as you know, the even signs are the man's left side. The odd signs are his right side. The reverse for the woman. A woman's even signs is her right, and the odd signs are her left. So just got to remember that. So this is my right eye, which has a very strong sun in Leo. And this is my left eye, which has a very weak sun in Pisces. And this eye has always been bothering me. So I get, the first time I got hit with a snowball was in the eye. Dignities. So this is the one eye that continues to do. So when you look at your chart, you have to pay attention to your eyes because of the moon and the sun. The sun for a man is his right eye. For a woman, it's her left eye, and the reverse is true for the moon. So if you're a woman, then the moon is your right eye, the sun is your left eye. And whichever one is more powerful in the chart will have more tendency to have a problem. So you just got to watch your eyes and look at that, and that's one of the tricks you'll pick up. I've always known about this eye because it's always been the one that got pointed at.
That's your moon, right?
It's my moon eye.
Mm-hmm. Moon eye. Oh, that's Quechua. Moon eye.
Yeah, it's like, yes.
Moon eye is like, I think, thank you or something.
Moon eye over her eye. It's one of those good songs you hear about. So anyway, what we want to talk about today is how the planets do what they do the way they do them. And without this knowledge, I don't think you can read a chart. I just don't. Now, last night we had a gentleman visit us, Dr. Harness. I like the guy. I mean, I like him. However, he's doing what all astrologers need to do in order to get a name for themselves and write a book. And that is come up with something totally unique in astrology and then hawk it. Mine is the sunset chart. I created the sunset chart, but I did it from years, 27 years of research and study and learning how to read Egyptian hieroglyphs and cuneiform. These are the things that I had. And I went to UCLA and got people who could do it with me, and we would go through the books and the archives and everything else to find little tidbits about planetary arrangement and meanings before I came up with this idea. And it was called the sunset chart because, like the Jewish tradition, sunset starts the day. It still does in a lot of Middle Eastern countries too, by the way. Sunset starts the day. And it makes sense when you think about it because starting the day at sunset, well, now you can look up and see where the planets are. You can't do that during the day. They're blinded out by the light. So we've got to watch for that. But anyway, the dignities have wormed their way in, and they got more and more. There's things about dignities in the Chaldean folklore, but they were called like secret houses, Bitten the Mercies, secret house. And they worked along with how the planets and the eclipses worked within that framework. And this is one of the things they worked with. But as it eked out and finally got into the Arabian, well, earlier than that, when it eked out into the Greco form, they needed something to tell them how to navigate. And so they used this system in one way. The reason why the stars are seen as navigational positions is they, the people who lived in the Mediterranean, not they, the people who lived in the Mediterranean primarily, basically had the outline of all of the Mediterranean, all the way around the whole thing. It's in their heads, in their map. And what they did, oddly enough, was what the wise men did, and I'll put 3 wise men did when they were searching for the Star of Bethlehem. They, where each port was in each of the countries, they would associate that figure in the sky. So literally, if you're sailing out of Italy, Italy was in the sky. because each of the port was represented by a star, and the main star, the brightest star, whatever that constellation was their key figure. They would know from that star how to angle where they want to go. Isn't that interesting?
That's cool.
And so if they needed to go to leave port here and go off up into that direction, they just simply took this star and that port in the sky, and they followed that process, and they simply followed that star till they got to the port, just like the wise men followed the star to Bethlehem. This is really what we do, but we just do it a little differently. But basically, this is all we do. So that was the process. And then, of course, once the dignities started showing up, these were the brighter stars, but then the planets were moving, and so that was giving them different directions and different ways to sail. And so the whole process in the Greek literature was about sailing. So it references sailing. So when you read a chart written by the Greek scholars, it's more maritime meaning than it is anything else. So a lot of Project Hindsight solved the problem, but after many years of trying to unconfuse it, they didn't know what they were talking about. They had a big problem with the word zoida, which is the animal track, but really wasn't. The animal was up here. And the zoida was the shape of the constellation that matched the country. So each country had a constellation. It's how they know how to go there. So they would simply, as the star of Bethlehem did, it would be on the horizon over there, and they just packed their camels up and went that way. And they kept going this way until the horizon and the star and everything else lined up by syzygy. And when it did, syzygy meaning alignment, we see that a lot with a new and full moon and eclipses. These are syzygies. That's where they line up and block each other. Also called, it's called a bunch of shit. So anyway, now they started trying to figure out what to do to make sure that all the sailing their vessels would be successful. And by doing this, they came up with the dignities. Later on, 16th, 14th, 15th, 16th century scholars started developing it. The Arabics came up with some wonderful ideas. Finally, by the 15th century, 16th century, Lilly had it down where he compacted it to a point where he took the Egyptian idea of limits and terms, what they call terms or limits, and decided to make them into what we use today as an astrological chart. The wheel is the heaven. That's what that is. But when we talk about today, the dignities is the actual chart. That's the port we're going to, in other words. Where do we want to land? And this is really what the dignities tell us. So when we look at charts, we need to understand what the description of the person is, and what their condition is, and how we can arrive at this condition by looking at a chart. And this is what we do. Is this a good deal, a bad deal? Is it, does it need to be waited on? Does it need to, do we need to act immediately? What do we have to do? And so when we look at this, we find out that areas will tell us where the dilemma lies and why there's a dilemma and how it's best solved. Last night we had a guy who did what all astrologers do. They find a niche. He did the niche called Yortish astrology, the light of the planets. And the more light, the more power is basically what that means in that culture. He left out a lot of things, but what I don't like about this, well, background, I studied it. I bought a house in Palm Springs, and for 17 months, I lived there. Nobody was allowed to visit me, so there was no pool, no phone, no pool, no pets, nothing. My time, stay away. And I studied this whole idea of Hindu astrology in a book, from the books, and I called up an astrologer, and Hindi astrologer, and a few other people who were clients from India, and they would tell me what certain words meant. So I would write them down as that, put them in English, in other words. Last night, did we get that? We got something very interesting. When your Gocha Nicha is pressing the Lagna, this means, I'll tell you what it means to me, bullshit. This is called verbosity. It's wordsmithing. A lot of astrologers like to do it. And it's one of my most strongest pet peeves is hearing somebody tell you something that makes no sense astrologically and then tell you what it's supposed to mean. A good astrologer will simply say, I see that you have this going on. It's like similarity to running through mud. Well, everybody knows what running through mud is. It's a bitch. How deep the mud is even more of a bitch. So it's like running through mud or running through snow that is knee deep. You know that this person has got a problem running through snow knee deep. This is exertion, this is tiring, and this is really going to knock them down. And yet, this is what you tell your clients. You need to be able to talk to them in English, not astrology. Because they don't know what the hell you're saying. Yeah. And this is what I listened to last night. And my biggest pet peeve is when I go online to read some of this stuff from the Indian astrologers when they put their 2 cents in. Well, Jesus, that's way overboard. When they put their ½ cent in,
The rupee.
they use these words that nobody understands, and you're supposed to be able to understand what the post is about. You've run across this a few. We're on the same, couple of the same posts. So every now and then a Hindu astrologer will come up with something. So you get your Ashtarga Varga. Isn't that wonderful? Or your Navamsha, or any of these things that are going on. And then of course the Dasha and the Bhukti is really important. And so this is what you're going to learn. Well, nobody learned it because he was speaking in another language. Now, the other thing that bothered me is I don't think an astrologer worth his salt would have lectured last night. Why? Can anybody tell me what rules lecturing?
Mercury.
Mercury in communication. Where's Mercury?
Retrograde.
It's not only retrograde,
It's a detriment.
it's in its detriment, and it's in its fall, and it's combust the sun.
Completely smashed.
It is the most blown up piece of shit that's in the zodiac right now. Anybody's got anything where you have either Gemini or Virgo in your chart, chances are you're having a problem with it. Because that's what's going on. And so that's why you want to know what these planets are doing by their dignity. And here somebody shows up and speaks absolute foreign language with all of these things going on with Mercury. So it's self-serving, isn't it? Retrograde, retrograde, retrograde. And I met the guy actually 32 years ago. And he's a clinical psychologist. And so he talks to you in clinical psychology using astrology, which is fine if you have a degree. So anybody with a degree in anything, if they can convert that into astrology, this is where you really reign supreme. Because now you use what you already know and you attach what you know to the astrological meanings, and guess what? You are communicating, not only there, but here. Anybody hands you a book on astrology, you need to read it. You need to. Because you need to know where what is happening right now. And so this is the most painstaking thing I find as being who I am, astrology-wise. If somebody gives me a book, I have to read it. So I know what other astrologers are talking about. Therefore, I find the loopholes, and if somebody brings their system to me, I can talk to them in a meaningful manner, which usually is throw the book away. I go to libraries, some of my clients have libraries the size of this wall, astrology books. My question is why? One book should give it to you. One.
Really?
Well, that specifically, but outside of that, one book should say it. Follow the book. Then we have 23 different ways of casting a chart, different house systems. Why? I'll tell you why. Nobody goes to the root source. And if you don't go to the root source, you can't do the process. And that's simple as that. What you're going to get today is a root source. It's going to be a root source of planetary meaning by dignity. A planet has to have some form of power to do something. Could President Trump do what he's doing if he wasn't president? No. He has to be the president in order to do it. As a businessman, he couldn't do much, except in his own empire. And that's what but now that we've given him that credit and position, now he can do more. So this is really how that works. What can you do within the framework of who you are and why you are right there? Okay, consider this the best day of your life as far as astrology goes. This is the chart I'm talking about. Now you look at it, it's incredibly daunting. You go, oh shit, wow. But it isn't. It really isn't. All we're doing is we're looking at a sign. What the sign is, it's glyph, it's ruler. Remember we did the 1A thing. So remember that, it's the same thing. The sign has a partner. It's a planet. And the planet is like an ambassador. It roams around the zodiac where the sign stays still. So the sign says, this is what I'm talking about. And the planet says, this is where I'm talking about it from. So the ascendant sign, whatever it might be, will have a planet can go any of the other 12 houses, including its own. So when it does that, it's an ambassador. It flies all over the damn chart. And it tells you where the interest lies. So Aries has Mars as its ruler, and that's important because Mars can go anywhere and do anything. And you can see that I have it here. Now, what's interesting about this is, how many of you know how to assign the planets to the days of the week? What day is Sunday? Sun day.
Monday is
Moon
the moon.
day.
Tuesday's
Mars.
Martes,
Miércoles.
Mercurio, Mercury.
Yes, Mercury.
Thursday, Jueves,
Thursday.
Jupiter.
Is Thor, is
Jupiter.
the god of thunder, and
Friday,
thunder
Venus.
is.
Saturday, Saturno.
So it follows a line. This is exactly what it does. So that's how you got to remember that. So when you look at this chart, you got to remember that part of your listing is going to be that they always follow the same way as far as the days of the week go. You just look at this, you'll see it. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right on through. It just goes right on around. And if you want to do the Chaldean method, and this is one of the reasons why ancient aliens came around, the storm, is that for some reason the ancients went furthest out and counted in. Nobody knows why. Well, George Tsoukalakis knows why. Saturn's the first chart. Right?
First planet he hit.
But when you read the Chaldean text, they call Pluto as the first. They call it. They don't name it Pluto, but they call it the little one.
Is that planet X? The one they're not
No,
sure
they called
is-
it the little one.
They don't know if it's a planet.
Now,
or
Planet
not.
X is totally beyond Pluto.
Yeah.
And they got all kinds of shit flying around with that one. Nibiru is supposedly one of them and all this
That's
other thing.
one of it.
But when you go out there, they had in their text, and you look at their stone tablets, you'll see that there's this little bitty thing, a dot, and then you'll see there's two the same size. They call them the twins, Uranus and Neptune, and then came Saturn. And then as you come in this way, so you go Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and then the Earth. Well, this is why the 7 is so important in all of religion. Because if you count the planets inward, Earth is number 7. If you count inward. So we're on the 7th planet. 3rd from the sun, but 7th from the outer planets. So they use that. However, they didn't put it out there as such. So when you look at this, you can look at it this way, and you'll see that this is what they're talking about. There's Saturn. Next is Saturn and Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, and then back to Saturn again. So you can see here we're coming in from the Chaldean order of Saturn's out first, Jupiter second, Mars third. Then they go to the Sun, and then they come back to, and it just rotates this way. So it rotates this way as the days of the week, and it rotates this way as a Chaldean order. Just one of the simple methods that you learn to use when you look at this to remember things. The other thing is, notice that from Aries down to Cancer, it's going to be the same kind of triplicity. It goes Sun, Venus, Saturn, Mars, Sun, Venus, Saturn, Mars, Sun. See? So every 4 is a repetition by 3. It's a triplicity. So this is the thing, the little tricks that you want to pull together for yourself. But this is the chart, and you'll notice that everything is everywhere. It's all over the place. So when you look at a chart, any sign is going to have something to do with a planet. Either you're going to love it or hate it, or enjoy it. It's going to do something. Notice I have the smiley doodads to uglies. And where the smile is telling you they like this shit. that's a really light. This is kind of light. This is okay. This is, oh, I don't know, but this is absolutely no good. And that's what that means. So when you look at this chart, it's working with it. When you look at triplicities, there's a day triplicity and a night triplicity. A day chart wants to look at sun as part of its triplicity ruler. At night, day chart at night, which is masculine planets at night, will be by Jupiter. So, and then for the feminine, it's going to be Moon and Mars. And what that means by that is that these planets they have more strength attached to them. So when you look at a night chart, the sun sign is kind of like, over there, behind, somewhere over the mountain. And until Kate, what's her name, sings about that moon coming over the cowshed, it's behind the mountain, so it has no power. It's the lunar power that takes on night charts. So you need to look at the night chart, which is going to be Moon, Venus, and Mars. They are the night rulers. The daytime rulers are the Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn. These are daytime. In other words, those three planets have more power during the day, and the ones at night will have more power. The Moon, Venus, and Mars have more power during the night. So if you're born at daytime, those are planets that are more important. If you're born at night, then the other planets are more important. It's just that simple, and it's called sect, S-E-C-T. It's in my book, if you have it. That's my hand.
So I'm trying to take what you just said and interpret it with mine. So, I'm Mars, or excuse me, Aries, but I was born at night, but it says my triplicity for the day is the sun.
Yeah, it wasn't quite at night. It was settling. It's not quite at night.
So the
it's
sun
right on the wuzzy top.
So because I'm on the cusp, the sun is still considered.
I pulled it up, yeah.
Interesting. And then, okay, so mine kind of doesn't apply. So if you're
No,
right,
it does apply. Why would you say that?
because I was born at night.
No, you were born in the day, turning night. You were in that twilight zone. And the twilight zone doesn't say, let's call you a nighttime birth.
So what's the cutoff?
Well, actually, when we look at the sun, it's a circle with a dot. Okay, literally, when that dot hits the 7th house cusp, it's officially night. Now it's going past it. So the dot that's why it's there. That dot for the sun symbol is exactly the center. That's a Kazemi point. And when it passes that point, now it's night. I don't think yours does. If you look at the sun by number, and you'll see there's a few minutes pointing up.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
I love that look of. Yeah, okay. The other look is like, oh shit, that's kind of cool.
So, back to what you guys were talking about right now. So, a night chart would be if you are born before 6 a.m.?
Before sunrise, after
yeah,
sunrise.
before
That's
sunrise.
the best way to do this. And the point of the sun, that dot in the center is the demarcation
If
point.
you're at the 1st house cusp or the 7th house
Mhm.
cusp, then
That
you
dot
would
will be the
determine that.
demarcation point.
What if you were born in Alaska?
I know. Well, one of the reasons why I use A, whole sign or equal houses, is because once you get up in that area, the curvature of the earth gives us a perspective. There's an old joke about the perspective of a bird that shows people walking underneath. Right? And so it's a perspective, but when we're standing on the equator, all the houses are equal. But as you roll towards the center where it groups together, all the houses start getting shorter by that measure. So what happens this is why when I see charts that are got intercepted houses, I see you were born further north. After 40 or so, because that's what's happening. So the perception is that they look like they're squeezing as they get towards the North Pole. So then you use either the whole sign, which is really a valid chart. You just got to put in your numbers, they send it to midheaven, and they just go from there. And it becomes a valid chart. Matter of fact, it's becoming more and more the peach of everybody's eye, the whole sign chart. So I would go in that direction. Or equal house, whatever degree the sun is, all the houses are that same degree.
So she being born in Colombia, you're going towards the South Pole. Does it work the same way going toward? Now you're just
Either
going
pole scrunches, it doesn't matter.
Okay, and being Colombia is closer to the South Pole, again, it's kind of like Alaska in a sense, it's getting very close.
Yeah, well, you need to flip it. Do not go south. You need to use the northern hemisphere. You can't go south hemisphere. Hundreds of astrologers have written about this, and none of them come up with satisfactory anything.
So just flip it and pretend it's the north.
Pretend it's the north hemisphere. You have to, because otherwise, it doesn't make sense. You know, to have spring at our fall equinox.
Yeah.
The spring
That's
equinox,
what
or
I'm
fall
saying.
equinox. The only time it makes real sense is when you look at hurricanes. You see that the summer months in the south are coming up to the northern months, and the cold air meeting the hot air is going to do what? Right at the Gulf of Mexico. That's why that's Tornado Alley. And wait till next year if you think we had a good one this year. It's going to really hit. Be interesting to see who forecasts what with that. But that's basically it. Yes, it goes either pole will squinch the houses, and it's from a perspective because you're looking at it, and you know it's like looking at train tracks. You know up the mile where they touch, they're not touching. You know that.
Parallax.
But they look like they are. And so that's the same thing with astrology. So it's best just to use either equal house or whole sign, and then you're done with it. Just put in the points that's pertinent.
So you're saying that you switch the poles?
No, just use the northern hemisphere chart.
And Solar Fire automatically adjusts
It'll
that?
automatically do it for
I have a
you.
friend in Chile that I haven't
Yeah,
done a
it
chart
just,
yet,
it just
so-
shows the chart from a northern hemisphere point of view. A lot of people have tried that, and it just does not work because it's counterintuitive. And so it just doesn't work this way.
Okay, but Solar Fire automatically switches?
It'll automatically do it for you.
Okay,
You just
good.
put it in and switch it around, and you just work with it. So you're okay, you don't have to worry about it. But back in my day, when I was your age, you had to calculate this shit.
Yeah.
It's a brand new game. So,
I have another friend from Colombia that she wants me to do charts, so that's why I was asking.
yeah,
If flips.
just Solar Fire just takes care of it. It
Okay.
makes the adjustment for you.
Okay.
So anyway, each of these have a position. So you have a sign, rulership, exaltation, triplicity, the terms, the face, the detriment, and the fall. Actually, fall should be before the detriment, but I didn't care when I made this chart. So that's how this is working, okay? Now, it looks daunting, but I gave you a couple of clues that'll help you break it down into segments and get some feeling for it. The night rulers, as I said, are here. The day rulers are here. You have it. You should have that in the chart. So all of that is yours to have right now. So you don't have to worry about it. We're going to call this the rulership. And this point right here, as you can see by the stairway to hell, why is it a highway to hell but a stairway to heaven? It tells you the amount of traffic that's being
Going to
There's-
hell?
and this is the rulership, and the rulership is the highest on the level. With rulership, I might as well just put this dude right here. Because rulership tells you that this person is completely king of their domain. A planet in its own sign is completely self-assured, has its own inner strength. You can't shake them. They're not going to give you anything, but they don't want anything. They're completely happy within themselves. This is the one place in your chart, if you have it, you can reach your nirvana point. Not your nirvana point. You have a satori point. The rest of us got to get to where you are before we get up to the next level. But other than that, but this is where you go. So this inner drive or spirituality is really what that amounts to. And these people are more than likely capable of doing it because they're already totally self-absorbed. There's nothing they need. There's nothing they want. They don't need food because just figure this guy is living in his own estate and everything is provided. Everything. And that's what the rulership is. So when you see a planet in its own sign, this is why you see that these people, they seem arrogant. They seem, and what they have is strength. Us Leos do this. And when people, oh yeah, it must be a Leo. Well, yeah, I'm in my own sign, I'm in my own element. So I feel very good about who I am and what I am and everything else. There's no process that goes beyond that. I don't need anything. I mean, that's why I charge such a high exorbitant fee for classes. Is, you know, you guys, it comes elsewhere. So what the hell? You know, you might as well share and have fun, because this is what I like to do. You know, the money's inconsequential. Shit, get plenty of that. You just go to a bank and go, and they give it to you. There's a comeback to that, especially if you're at Wells Fargo. But outside of that, you know. So the process here then is this exaltation by rulership is beyond belief. It is totally within its realm. It needs and wants nothing, nor is it willing to help you. Because it don't expect help, and it's not going to put up. So beer and pizza on moving day, sorry. Unless it serves their own selfish purpose, they do what they do when they do it and why they do it. This is it. A very, very powerful placement for a planet to be. And when you see it in a chart, this means that this is probably the person you're going to have a problem with, because they're totally self-absorbed, especially if the ruler of the seventh is in the seventh and it's a love question. This person, I had a question where this gal, Gemini rising on the horary, and Sag on the seventh house with Jupiter right next to the seventh house. Well, look at Mercury. It's totally destroyed. And look at over there with Mr. Planet in my own sign. Oh, I'm free as a bird, which means fuck you, basically. They don't want anything. Unless you got a lot to offer, this free as a bird guy ain't interested in this destroyed Mercury. She has nothing to offer. And you know, how do you tell a client that? Basically, you've got nothing to offer, and that's why he's not coming back. You know, you don't have the dowry he wants. So that's it. So this guy, although it's strong, has a lot of potential and power, very, very self-aggrandizing. It is only for itself. So when you see this in a chart, that's what it means. It's not wrong. It's just what it is, because people who take care of themselves have the ability to do what? People who take care of themselves have the ability to do what?
Anything.
Take care of others. Airplane, remember the old fly, put this on first, don't put it on your kid, you might die. You do it, that way you can help other people. This is what the whole idea is. This is where rulership comes from. So rulership is the most powerful, most elevated planet in the chart. So wherever you see it, it goes really strong. When you see it in an angle, 1, 10, 7, or 4, that's a holy shit. That's a whoa. This person has got command of that house completely, and it's great for an executive CEO. You put that somewhere up in that area, oh my God. They run the roost. This is why when you see the sun in the 10th house, almost regardless what sign, these people are executives. They make good executives, and they know how to take care of business. So this is really the king spot. This is really the place that you want to see this planet. Any of these planets that are listed under that rulership is the king. They or queen. You guys can be queens and kings. I don't give a shit.
So
Talk to me.
application of it is that we look where the sign is, and then we look where that planet is with that sign, and then that's how we apply
If it's
it.
in its own sign,
Right,
it is in its rulership. It's in
and
the
that's,
state
this
of
equals this,
rulership.
yeah.
And that's what that list is telling you. And when it's in that place, it is absolutely on top of the game. Yes.
How much difference is there in terms of power between rulership and exaltation?
I think I better go there next.
Okay.
I have a question about exaltation.
Please do.
I'll wait.
Okay.
You might answer.
Here's the exaltation.
Yes.
This is second in line. This is likened to an individual if in the army has reached the highest state of rank they can possibly be in. What does exaltation mean?
You ain't
You look
going
up to
anywhere.
them.
Yeah.
So these are generals. These are the CEOs of the corporation. These are the people, the CFOs. These are the people who take care of business and are looked upon with this attitude. it's not that they can do no wrong, because there's a slight fear that that exaltation, that highest pinnacle of whatever it is they're doing, might slip out, the rug might slip out from under their feet. So there's a slight fear behind this. But rulership doesn't care. I don't care what you think or why you think it. Exaltation has got a little bit more to it. It says that I really love my position. However, I got to stay very keen on who is after it. I have to know who's after it. So a lot of times you see somebody in exaltation, there's a little trepidation behind it, but they act the part. Pardon?
They're always looking over the shoulder to see who's coming.
Yeah, to see if somebody's coming up on them. That's exactly it. But the exaltation is they've reached the highest mark that they can reach. Where do you go from up? Where do you go from up?
Down.
Right. Remember the ancients, they built pyramids for this. If you're at the pinnacle, either way, you're looking at it. But this is supposedly heaven. This is our descent into earth. This is our lifespan. And when we terminate, what do? We go back to heaven. This is why reincarnation is so popular in all the ancient cultures, because the pyramid almost guarantees it. You got to go back to your source. So this is what they're doing. But exaltation does not want that final point. People who are in their exalted states live, especially if they have things that are worth keeping in their own idea of keeping it. People who are in these states tend to live a longer age. They don't want to let go. George Burns, Reagan, this way friggers died until they became the prune shell itself. I mean, that's it. I mean, this is why. They don't want to let that power go. They don't want to let it go. Rulership, almost the same thing, although they accept death, it's what it is. But exaltation has that little thing behind it that says, I don't want this to end so much. I like this position. And this is where all of our congressmen basically reside. Literally, this is where they go, because they got the fat of the land, and they're looked upon as exalted people. They studied law so they could use it against you. This is what it's about. Now, this is the process. Any questions on exaltation now?
Okay, so going over the chart, why does the sun get to be exalted in Aries, and why does Jupiter get to be exalted in, why not some other planet? What's
The exaltation is the opposite place of the fall. So where a planet is in its fall, it's in its exaltation across the wheel. Just like a planet in its rulership is in detriment across the wheel. So the exaltation and fall. The sun is exalted because of its promise of life. Aries is what? It's the first day of spring. So this was a celebration of spring. And all the promises that spring had to offer. The new crops, we're going to be rich this year, we're going to have a lot of food, everything is going to go our way come harvest. This is what that exaltation promises. And so when you see the sun in this area, it becomes exalted for that reason. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer because then, in the 16th, 17th century, wasn't a large family desirable? Well, hell yes, you had, you was a serf, so you needed kids to go out there and do chores and help. So you wanted a large family. They guaranteed a richer harvest, a bigger harvest, a larger harvest, an expanded harvest. Jupiter. Each one has its exaltation for a reason. Mars is exalted in Capricorn because it can invade a country and do it right. That's exactly what it does. So Mars, exalted by Capricorn, is a person who knows how to get into a situation and take control of it. They know how to invade a country and become the ruler. Or at least whoever they work for as a ruler, they know how to do it.
Oh, because
Richard. Yeah.
Sorry.
On the Virgo, we have the ruler is Mercury.
Yeah.
Exaltation at 15 degrees is Mercury.
Yeah.
But
Mercury has the distinct ability to have both an exaltation and a rulership. This is why we see that listed as a scientific sign. They're
Okay,
very good at cutting. They're very scientific in what they do. Weights, measures, good nurses. That's why it's a sixth house, health and ill health. Ill health. That's what it's about. So Virgos really do that extra thing. They know, and if you date one, you'll soon find out. You know, they love you, but that little hair right there needs to go.
Oh, yeah.
You know, yeah, they got it. Yeah,
I'm not gonna get ahead of the game, but when we.
yes, you are.
Yeah.
And what about
Mercury at 30 degrees face, we'll talk about that then, but that's the these are the exception to policy parts that we'll go over a little bit later on that lower part. Well, when you're saying exalted.
I'm exaltation. You're in the face.
Well, the exaltation at 15 is perfect, I mean.
Okay,
it's-
the numbers there that are under that means that is its perfect, deepest point. So when you get to that point, it is truly super Gothic. It has got the whole ball of wax. It's got the army, it's got the ammunition, it's got the force, it's got the intelligence, it's got everything.
Okay,
It's super holy shit wow. That's what that means.
there's no 5-degree rule on any of this?
Nah, it's,
Okay, good.
no.
It's cut
So
dry.
that degree of exaltation is its deepest state. It's also a
Okay.
deep state of fall on the other side.
Right.
And that is just really where it becomes most destructive. Just a moment, yeah?
So Mars is exalted in Capricorn
Yes.
because Capricorn is the 10th house. Is that why?
That's part of it.
And what's the other part?
Part of it is rules competition, the war, the art of war. And in the 10th house, it's well designed to do it.
And what about Saturn and Libra?
Yeah, that one always throws me.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay, how many of you have been married?
yeah.
And how many would you like that marriage to last? Time, Capricorn, Saturn. When you fall in love, you don't want to fall in love for 8 minutes unless you're a player, like me. You fall in love, 8 minutes later you get a divorce, or you wait till morning. You wait till the morning after breakfast, and it's more conducive to self-aggrandizement. But outside of that, no. Saturn is exalted here because you want justice served exact, right at the fulcrum point, an eye for an eye. That's exactly what it is. That Saturn becomes a fulcrum point here. But you want a relationship to be a truly giving relationship. You want it not as a duty, which Saturn says it is, but you want it as a constructive process. And this is what Saturn suggests you do in a chart, is to do things in a constructive way. You need to start with A and understand the 4 balance points, and you have to go from there. So what happens with Saturn here is more like contribution to a marriage rather than a duty to the marriage. A lot of people read it as a duty. No, it really becomes it's a contribution. When you have a partner, you contribute to that partner. When you have children, you contribute to them. And most of you have children know that part.
Well, and you could, I guess, look at it as like you're teaching each other lessons too. Saturn teaching.
Well, and if you're born in Libra, your main life path is to balance the scales.
Exactly.
So Saturn helps you balance those scales.
Yeah, Saturn becomes a fulcrum. It
Yeah.
gives you an eye for an eye, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you notice it's always blind? Yeah, like today's thing, anyway.
Okay. But I'm trying to determine, this is just an example. I have, my son is 19 in Aries, and it's here it says, or 18, it says here it's 19. So that's, 18, that's like, so how much
It's one of these
closer,
signs.
huh?
It's one of these signs.
Okay. How much closer to that
It's
is?
in it, it's ordinal. So 18 going to 19 it's what it is, it's ordinal.
Uh-huh.
0 is the first point.
Right.
Then 1 is really going from first point to the next place. It's ordinal.
Okay,
So it's 18 up to 1859 is basically 19 degrees.
right.
It's ordinal. It's pointing
Okay.
to it.
So that number, how much more,
Well, you're,
well, no, I'm asking, how much closer does that bring exaltation to rulership, being that number?
So you have to look at Mars, because rulership is the Mars, but it helps Mars a hell of a lot. So if you got a shitty Mars, that's gonna help Mars somewhat. it's gonna give it some diplomacy, it's gonna give it some respect, it's gonna give it some dignity.
Cause I got Mars in your detriment,
Yes,
it's like,
so that don't balance each other, but it allows you to look at that and take care of where that detriment sits you. This is the repairman, this is the person who fixes shit.
okay,
And that's really what that amounts, because the detriment is not necessarily your detriment, because that vitality of Aries is not your detriment. The Mars rulership is saying this is where the detriment lies that you need to correct. So it's not you so much as it is what you need to correct. You can take it as you and walk around looking at the floor and saying I'm a piece of shit all day, but you can't do it with that deep exaltation.
okay,
So you're a guy that is called to fix things. And this is what I would use at interviews.
that's what I do.
I'm the
That's
guy that'll
me.
fix it. If you got a problem, I can fix it. You know, because I fix problems. I've been known to fix problems my whole life.
You were talking about it, the sun is being fulfilled, the promise of.
Well, that's why it's an exaltation for
You'll-
spring.
you'll-
It's the promise of this
But
new life.
But promise isn't fulfillment. Or is it attached to
No,
fulfillment?
that's where the rest of them start showing up. No, it's just a
Okay.
promise. It's just a
a
promise.
'cause you
I know a
can
lot of
pro-
Aries I don't want to deal with.
Yeah, you can promise everything,
Yeah, and
but
they
they
do.
never close.
But the problem with that is that the exaltation has a problem. It has to look over its shoulder all the time. So it may embellish.
Oh,
And when
no.
they start doing their shit and embellishment, and you catch them at it, there's no more trust. That's the fastest thing you'll find when somebody has a planet in exaltation, is they want to embellish that. And when they do, oh shit. You go, I don't know if I trust that or not. So you gotta be careful. This is where you gotta be careful. This is where humility steps up. These are the two that humility has to be in place. You know, you just can't walk around and know everything, because you don't. You never will. And so you just need to be able to work with the problems at hand and deal with them. So your exaltation is a pinnacle of who you are in your field. So if I saw a chart that somebody wanted to tell me something about themselves, and I saw that their ruler, first house ruler, was in exaltation, I would know they're in the pinnacle of their field. They're doing everything they need to do it right. And this is what they're doing. That's who they are. But there's a fear of loss. Why? Because the sign is going to soon change. That planet's going to soon get out of there, isn't it? So when you look at this chart, you'll see there's an exaltation all the way down except a few. Mercury is not, there's no exaltation for Gemini. You can't out-talk a Gemini. So there's no exaltation, because they don't give it respect. They're not going to give it any respect. So when you see there's no exaltations, or a blank box, that means there's no respect here for that position, especially for the sun. There's no exaltation for Leo. They just ain't going there. Triplicity. You guys, in my view, are in triplicity. You are members of this class. You're part of the team. Without you, I couldn't do this. But rarely do any of you step forth to offer too much information. It's more like an Atlantic class. So triplicity is friendly. It's like having a good neighbor who kind of watches your back from across the street. They're a team member. And so it's like having a good team member who knows how to play the game and knows how to direct what's going on. It helps and assists in the process. And so triplicity is exactly that. It's a friendly person who wants to help. And they usually do. They usually will. So it's pretty nice. So when you see somebody in their triplicity, you can see that when you're doing a chart and the rising sign has their ruler in triplicity, you can see that it's not a strong place, but they're a good member of the team. They're respected. They're a respected member of the team. A lot of times, I think Clara Barton, the nurse, Clara Barton. Anyway, she, World War I dignity. She had her rising sign in that place. And the one thing they said about her more than anything else was she was a great team member. So there it was. But that was her triplicity. So the triplicity basically is you're part of the game, but you're not in charge of it. You're just a part of it. You're involved. You might have some input. You might not have some input. You might work for somebody who gives you the directions to make sure that they're carried out. That's basically how that is. So the triplicity is, it's a nice dignity to have, but it's not a great one. It's not like the other two that just says, look at me because that's what you're supposed to be looking at. Triplicity is just, I'm part of the team and I'll contribute where I can. Yes, ma'am.
So, Cancer triplicity, day and night is Mars, but it's fall.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? You like chili? Does it give you heartburn?
Yes.
Okay.
Triplicity fall. See, you're getting both sides of that. It's not either. It's both sides. So when you have a conjunction, like Jupiter conjunct Saturn, well, Jupiter wants to expand, Saturn wants to contract. So I have this. So how did I solve that problem? I studied history, ancient history. So I took a point of ancient history and expanded upon it. Okay, that's what I did. So I inverted the pyramid. Venus, Mars, painful love. It's both, because Mars takes and Venus gives. So when you have them together, it's a painful love. Maybe you fall in love with somebody who's married and can't walk away. You're in pain, yet you're in love. So you see, it's both. It's not, so you can't try to blend this shit. Pick one up. When you look at Leo, its sun is the ruler, but the first 6 degrees of Leo is Saturn. What is that about? Well, that first 6 degrees is telling you that this person who's got Saturn there as a part and parcel of this, really basically by term, they're going to have to use the sun to overcome that Saturnian process. And they usually do. That'll be next in the term, because that's how this works. You have both, but you need to figure out where the both are doing. And it's just a matter of looking. I mean, what does it mean and how are they working together? They don't blend. No planets blend. They don't want to blend. Even trines don't blend, or sextiles. They don't blend. What they do is they assist, and they tell you how to assist. So a trine is a 5th house or a 9th house adjustment that somebody in those 2 houses are more than willing to give you whatever the 1st house needs. 5th house, a child might be of help. The 9th house, clergy or prayer might be a relief. One of those 2 things will assist you in the 1st house. That's what a trine does. Sextile, the same thing. Sextile is the 3rd house, 9th house, 11th house from the ascendant. Those 2 points, that sextile, either way, is assistance, but it's assistance that you have to ask for. They're not just going to give it to you like a trine. A trine will bring it to you. A conjunction will put a pie in your face. Here's all the help you'll ever need. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay, so the triplicity is a good number. Okay? What do we have next?
Term.
The term. So I got a nice surprise. The term is going to tell you, okay. The term is not necessarily a dignity. It's really in the middle of it. It's a low term affair. It's how things are implemented, how they perform. And if you have something in the term, remember we just said the of Saturn, the first 6 degrees in the term of Leo. The sun is very positive. It's going to overlook a lot of the problems, but the problems are going to be there for them to overlook. I have this. I'm going to tell you something. The first 7 years of my life was a real friggin' doozy. I grew up in the shithole of America. If they were going to give the world an animal, this is where they put the tube, where I grew up. It's awful. It's awful. And the process there was just unimaginable. But I had my imagination, and so I could get out from under this. And of course, my mother married some jerk and pulled me out of that. So we went out. I got rescued. But there it was. Sun, I had this Pollyanna attitude in its own sign. But Saturn was there, its detriment. So I had both of these things to work with. And I was raised in really not the best place. Coming out of Boston, it was worth coming out of Boston. Let me tell you. So this is the process. Everything is happening at the same time. So how it's done, what's done, why it's done, and where it's done. So you want to look at that triplicity ruler as it relates to the first house to see what's going on, or how does it relate to the house you're interested in. If you want to change your job, if you're going to change your diet, how are you going to implement it? And that's what the term will tell you. That will be what you're looking for when you look at that across the road. That term will tell you this point. Therein lies you giving an order to your daughter to do the dishes after supper. Who's implementing? You are delegating, but she's implementing, she's doing. So she's a term of what you're doing. So that's what those terms are telling us. And they're limited by boundaries. And each one of those terms are telling you how things are done. When you see somebody who have a term in Gemini, or the term will fall in, let's say, Mercury, generally the person's taller, because the term is implementing a tallness. If, you know, whatever that is. If it's in an earth sign, generally they're a little shorter. So the terms will tell you different to how things are being done, what the implementation is of the process. And it's good to take your chart and just go through it and list these things and run with it, because it tells you basically what you're doing. And when you get a horary, it tells you basically, if you look at the rulership and the rulership is in term, they're useful. If it's a lost item, it's something that's not really valued, but it's very useful, like a purse. It's what's in the purse that's valuable. The purse itself is just useful. You know, nothing else. Go.
As you go across here, are these lessening? Or is everything, all these in terms
Look at the top.
or the same
Look at the
value?
very top of the chart.
Smile,
You get the faces.
yeah.
Okay. So at that point, you're at a smile, and that's about it.
But they're all equally the same, all the rows across. I mean, I'm wondering if this
They
is,
all have a different numerical value.
like, this is,
But
this
yes,
one
the
is,
term-
this one is less, this is the least term, and then this is the greater of the term?
Yes.
Okay,
So the greater the term is here, the least of the term is where we're going.
okay.
But they all have, yes ma'am.
So for example, if we're looking at the term of Cancer at 30 degrees, Saturn is there. So in that case, what would it mean that Saturn is in Cancer? Because it's Saturn in Cancer is detriment, but at 30 degrees it's term. So
The last of the degrees have most Mars or Saturn at the end of it. This is why the last of the degrees, 28, 29, or whatever, they all
That's
are considered malefic because of that point. They all have it.
okay.
Not all of them, but most of them. Some of them don't. But they have at the end these terrible diseases that are going on as far as implementation of the dignity. They're the worst of dignities. It's like having a baby, Cancer, and having to care for it without help. And I would tell you that a person is under a burden. It's burden, Cancer. Saturn's a burden. It's something you have to put up with. If you don't believe me, ask anybody with Saturn in the first house. I'll tell you the way they grew up is like, holy shit. They're defending themselves all the time. But you know, there's something going on where, you know, it's not mine, it's not my job. You had the kid, you take care of it. You know, you're the goddamn production company, you know, you produced it, you care for it. No, you're the older sister, no, you take care of it. The older brother, you take care of it. It's a burden. But in Cancer, that burden is needing to care, and generally it's an elderly person. But sometimes it can be a child. Sometimes, but usually, especially if it falls in the 6th house, you'll be caretaker for a parent. After we got term, we have a wonderful thing. And it's the face. The face has no real dignity. And a lot of times, people who have planets in their face are pretentious. They'll talk about shit that they're not even involved with, you know, and pretend like they are. And so you'll hear all kinds of things about about their own idea of how grand they are. The face is considered someone who wears their clothes well, or has jewelry, but they have no means of support to get more. So the face is really a very weak place. It's not the best to be because it's considered, you know, poorly placed. There's this prospect about that where if you need, it's 1 minute to 6 and your kid needs milk and you run down to the corner store and just as you get there, the shopkeeper is closing the door. And so you beg, can I come in and just get a quart of milk and for my kid? It's up to them to say yes or no. The chances are they'll say no. Sorry, I gotta get home. See if they have it up the street, yeah.
So it's sort of like arm candy for some girls.
It kind of is, but that's all it is. There's no other thing. This comes from back when the people wanted a favor from the king or the queen. What they would do is they would take everything they own and buy the finest cloth they could, that they could afford. And necessarily mean it's fine, they would get what they could afford. And then what few gemstones they would have them sewn in so they would be visible to the king or queen. And then when they go before the king or queen, they would ask, for either land, favors, or whatever, to do whatever they wanted to do. This is what it was about. And so the queen or king would take a look at the type of clothing and decide within themselves just exactly what I should be giving them. Because they're just, I don't know that they'll follow through with this. We don't know. But they're there for presentation. They wear their clothes well. And they do okay with that. That's the face. And after we see a face, we need to do something that is, I think, for most people, something you have to be able to look at. You have to be able to go into the chart and see that if a planet is not in one of those terms, or face, or anything else, it will be peregrine. Peregrine means there is no reception. It has nothing to do with any other planet. It's feral. It's a feral planet. And they act this way. They have no care or consequence about their activity. And whenever there's a theft that's going on, you look for the peregrine planet. Chances are they had the opportunity and did it. Especially if the peregrine planet is in an angular house, 1, 10, 4, or 7. That tells you something about that. So you need to be able to look through the list to say Saturn. When you look at the sun in Cancer, you'll see there's nowhere along that line that there's anything that says the sun. It's peregrine. But it can be in a certain area of a distance. It could be after Mars, but before Saturn. Then in that case, that little distance between the two is peregrine. Because it's not touching either one. It has to be in that term in order to not be peregrine. But outside of any term, it's really a bad news planet. It's a crook, it's a hobo. It'll take advantage of any situation it can. And basically when you look at this, the early degrees, middle degrees, and late degrees, we've talked about it, is early degrees usually is a young person, middle degrees, 40s, later degrees an elderly. That's how that works. So all of this is always this way. A 0 to 5 to 10 degrees is just something just starting. Middle degrees is in the making. Last degrees is pretty well completed. Same thing here. You use the 0 to 30 degrees as an indicator as to for age, process, or anything else you want to do with that. And the same thing happens with peregrine. So when you find a peregrine planet, you're finding a planet that is absolutely feral. It will steal at any chance it gets, and usually they'll run like hell. And when that's the case, then you use the peregrine planet and the moon to see where they went. And of course, the direction is always there. You're looking for direction. That's, because that's one of the things we do. So peregrine planet is just that. It's feral. It's wild. It's carefree, and you don't count.
So the moon in Leo would also be peregrine.
It's
also.
peregrine.
So both ways, the sun and
Sun, moon. I've seen people who had this sun, moon mutual reception, which gives them some power, but they're both peregrine. And they're in some pretty interesting businesses. Very pretty interesting businesses. That's cool. So this is where peregrine comes from.
Probably taking students in for USC or something like that.
Yeah, there you go.
Say again?
Taking students in for USC maybe?
What does that mean?
Oh,
Yes.
you didn't see that?
Oh,
the
the
news story
scandal
about-
with
The scam with the colleges?
Have you not seen that on the news? No.
Oh, I'm aware of it. Nobody's peregrine here.
No, I'm
These
just saying,
perpetrators who think they deserve more than they get, they're in exaltation.
I mean, the school who ran that whole scam, those people, the coach himself that
They're pretty
took the
shitty.
money. Yeah, that would be the,
I would say they're peregrine, yes. The perpetrators. I would say yes, these people, they're the ones that'll steal from you. It's also good if you're gonna see a psychic, cast a chart before you go. Because it'll tell you if the little asshole is peregrine, that's the last person you wanna see, because they're looking at you and doing what we call a cold read. Do you know what a cold read is?
yes.
Yeah, you?
What is that?
A cold read is judging somebody by what they're wearing.
Wow.
If you show up in my office and you're sporting a holy shit diamond, what's it called it? You've got a problem. And let me tell you about this problem you've got. You have been cursed, and it'll cost you $50 to get rid of this curse.
There you go.
But you need to bring me a piece of red thread, a button from one of your old clothes, and maybe a handkerchief. You just gotta bring me these items. If you're stupid enough to go back with those items and pay that $50, that curse just got to 1,000.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how they judge you. Best gypsies in the world can do this like you won't believe. Psychics, I've known one in my entire life that was actually worth their salt. One in 78 friggin' years going on 79. One psychic, and I've been in this business since I've been 16. I used to go to places with my mother and watch them exude the ectoplasm. Oh my God, is that wonderful? I thought to myself, Jesus Christ, they must smoke a lot.
So you would cast a chart and look for.
Yeah, you want to see if the reader is going to be, a lousy reader. Well, who's he doing? Seventh house, because that's who you're looking at. Could be first. So if either one is peregrine, I'm not. You don't want to play with it. Same thing with dating somebody or anything else. If it's peregrine, they're thieves. They'll show up and take from you, and they'll walk away, not thinking twice that they got it. They don't care how you survive. It's none of their business. They have to survive. So, see you later. So peregrine planet is really the nasty point in the chart. It's like the South Node. It is just not redeemable.
Where's that?
It's not there because to list it would take another page. You have to go through and see what the planet is located, and in that sign, is it in a dignity or not?
Okay.
So that's what you do. I'll pull this chart out and show you again. Yeah.
So somebody with their, like if you're looking, you cast a chart for a psychic and their 7th house ruler is peregrine. It would be, if their 7th house ruler is peregrine, right? Or somebody else.
Yeah, I wouldn't go near him. Wouldn't go near him. Matter of fact, I'd hire a hitman. You need to take my place here and just, That's peregrine, not good. Fall. The next one is fall. If somebody comes to you and their ruler planet, the first house planet, is in its fall, or if they want to check on somebody whose planet is in the fall, these people have nothing. They probably just lost everything they've ever had. Probably lost their estate, probably lost their credit, probably lost their credibility. Anybody in its fall is absolutely worthless. They're the guy that you meet on the corner, asking for change. He's in his fall. He has no dignity. None of you would ever listen to any advice the guy would say unless you're stupid. So this is where that's at. So the fall is where the person has probably just lost their ass. However, it has a touch of dignity. And because it has this touch of dignity, there's a chance they might be able to regain it. Because the planet is going to change signs. It's going to move. I remember they change signs. And so as a chart moves, it changes signs. So these things shift. But when you first look at the chart, that impression is really what you got to go by. Don't try to second guess it. So if this person's in their fall, they have nothing to offer. They have no advice. They just can't be believed. They probably lost everything. Lost their entire everything. Thrown out in the street, live where you can, sorry. This is where that's at. Last but not wonderfully least. Anybody see Vertigo?
Yeah.
Remember the ad for Vertigo? The big cycle with the guy in the middle falling down and going to hell? What's interesting is if you look at Mercury in Aquarius at 29 degrees, where is it going? What's the next sign it goes to?
Pisces
And that for Mercury is what?
is its detriment
And
and fall.
when they first started doing this movie, Vertigo, Mercury was 29 degrees Aquarius. I always suspected that somebody knew astrology when he did his shows. I always suspected it. Anyway, 29. So then Vertigo, it's going from Aquarius to where?
Pisces.
It's fall and detriment. Who starred in it? Anybody remember who starred in Vertigo? Kim Novak. I'll
Yes.
spare you the problem.
Yep.
Guess who has Mercury at 29 degrees Aquarius?
Kim Novak.
You don't?
Kim Novak. So she was the perfect star for this movie. She was the perfect star because they're both in their process of going to where? Into their fall and detriment.
Isn't that
That's
Hitchcock?
yes. Such a beautiful, I mean, when you look at these symbology points in the chart, you say to yourself, holy crying out loud.
You put her in the birds too.
Well, who wouldn't? But look at what that was for her. I thought that was Tippi Hedren, but okay. Kim Novak? Okay. Anyway, so the process is that when you see detriment, no hope available. They have lost everything. They're going down that rabbit hole, and it is not the best place in the world you want to be. A planet in detriment is an absolute loss of everything. Prestige, honor, money, ability, title, everything. It's in the gutter. And right now, those of you who have, wherever you've got your Mercury, you're going to find out that, wherever you guys have a Gemini and Virgo, you're going to find out that those two departments of your life are sort of like iffy, because they're iffy. They're doing very iffy stuff, because where's Mercury? It's in its detriment, it's in its fall, it's retrograde, and it's combust. It's completely destroyed. So this is really a handy piece of information. You want to study it, and whenever you're doing a chart for somebody, you want to see where their position is in life, according to what it is you're looking for. Because you'll see, they're really strong, they're really weak, they got some good points, they got, holy shit, I wouldn't mess with that point. And it'll tell you what departments of life suck. Get away from that, just get away from it.
When you say that, is that both horary and natal, or?
This works very well in natal.
Okay.
With natal, bring the salt lick.
The what?
Salt lick. Somebody says a grain of salt, but no, I prefer the salt lick. Bless you, darling.
How to apply peregrine in the chart?
You have to do peregrine. You have to look for it. But this is it. This is the complete backbone of astrology. This tells you how, what, when, where, who, and just how much or how little somebody has in their lifestyle. And this will give you a lot of information if you'll take the time and enumerate each point and write it out and see what your planet is talking about and put it out there and just say what it is. You put a planet up, and you might say, what about my third house? What about where I live? Okay, well, put the third house ruler there, and put the third house sign there, and then you look for where the ruler is, and then you see if that's, and then what is it telling you? That's it. Simple.
The
that you?
duplicities at the bottom, the day rulers, the night rulers, do you have anything to add on to that, or?
Yes, if it's a day chart, you look at those, and they have a little bit more presence. They'll be looked at with a little bit more oomph. Maybe you put an underline under the planet. Okay, so, and you know how to figure that out, right?
Right, I do. I just
So it's
wanted to
above,
see
if it's above the horizontal line, it's day. If it's beneath the horizontal line, it's night. As simple as that. But all that means is bisect, that group of planets have a little bit more power, and the other ones have a little less power. So if somebody says, oh, I've got the moon and what's in it, well, if it's a day chart, moon and what's in it is really meaningless. It has nothing to do with it. So I have moon and what's in it. But I have a night chart. So my moon and what's in it says, take care of my eye. That's because it's the left eye, water sign. So remember, man, you're on the right, all masculine signs, and women, you're on the left, all feminine signs. You have to look at those places to see what's doing where. So bisect, it'll tell you a lot of information.
And the,
Huh?
and the diurnal and nocturnal on the bottom right also, is there any?
Day, night.
Day,
It's
night, that's
day,
it.
night. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just put it there for that reason. And just another way of saying it. Trick I picked up from Lily. Try not to repeat yourself.
Right,
Try not to do that. Of course, I do, but it's because I think it's a good cause.
So those are your most powerful planets. If you have a night chart, it would be the Moon, Venus, and Mars.
Yes,
If you have a day chart, then your most powerful planets would be the Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury.
not most, but significantly strengthened. They're strengthened.
Right,
because
depending on their
and a lot depends on what their dignity
dignities.
is gonna be. But
Right.
yes, but they do have an ounce of strength.
Okay.
Yes.
and do they go in orders of operation here, stronger to weaker in terms of power, or that doesn't make any difference?
Or based just on dignity.
When you put this sun, so on and so forth on there, is the sun, of course, is the most powerful because it's so grandiose in diurnal, and then of course, Jupiter, and then Saturn, and then of course, I guess that's what, I'm just asking.
I don't know what you asked. I'm still trying.
I think you're answering your question.
I think I just did, yeah.
The diurnal significators have a little more presence.
Okay,
The nocturnal significators have a little more presence over the diurnal if it's a night chart. So it depends if it's at night, when are you born, and when was the question asked? A lot of questions are asked during the day, but when I'm home, of course, I get the phone call at night.
right,
So they become nocturnal charts. So that's the first thing I want to look at. And the first thing I want to look at always is what's on the angle to tell me what I'm looking for. And
okay,
that'll give you a good idea. Yes.
So what happens if you get somebody calling you, you do a chart at night, and it's, all below the horizon?
Yeah, it's nocturnal.
Or it's only on one side of the chart or the other? I mean,
Okay.
how do you handle
Quadrants?
placement?
Okay. Lily covers this.
Yeah.
And he covers it by quadratures. And what you do is basically when you divide a chart down the middle, everything to the east side is personal. Everything to the west side is non-personal. So it's 1-7 kind of a configuration. And the same thing with top to bottom. At the night chart, it's sort of more subdued and sort of kept away. And a lot of people have a lot of night planets under the bottom are usually kept away. They're like invalids or processing problems that they can't, they really shouldn't be going out, anytime. So they're sort of like put away. But on top, they're sort of like shown out. Here you are, So the top end is more of a grandiose approach, and so you see that as more of a subjective, objective way of looking at it. So the underneath is very. The people here are very subjective. They're very concerned about what other people might think.
So when you're doing an horary, you take that into?
I take that into consideration always because I'm trying to figure out who I'm talking to, and that way I'll know how to answer the questions that they're asking and I know going to ask. A lot of times I'll get 10 questions on a call. Don't mind, it's their nickel. So talk, and I'll see what I can give you. And I don't have a problem with that. It's my job. And so, of course, a lot of people want you to give them the lottery numbers, and you get shit. All I gotta do is look up the frequency of numbers and pick a series. That's all. I told you guys that before. Go out, pick a series of the higher frequency numbers. They're the ones that are going to show up more. Well, here you have the dignities and how to evaluate them. And when you look at this, try to approach the person you're talking to with this dignity chart, because this is who you're talking to. This is how strong they are in whatever field that you're talking about, what, where, why, or when. But you need to find out the peregrine planets by looking. you're not, I don't know if Lily puts a listing out or not, he may. But if he does, copy it. See, if I look now here, I'm gonna look at Sag, and let's say that Saturn is in Sag, shit on it. That Saturn's in its own sign, so it's in its own dignity. So we don't have to worry about it, he's in his own. So if I look at Virgo, and I have Saturn in Virgo, but Saturn is 13 degrees, it's in Venus's term. Which is who gives a shit? It's peregrine, because unless it's in its own term, it's gonna have this, it's
Wait,
gonna
say
have
that
that as
Now
a
repeat
process.
it, please. Can you say it again?
Yeah, do that
The
one.
Saturn's in Virgo, so it's at 13 degrees, it's a peregrine Saturn. It has the term of Venus associated with it, but Saturn doesn't, there's no strength here. Unless somebody else is in Capricorn trining it, or something else happens to be in sextile to it, then it picks that up. So when you see an aspect to a planet that's peregrine, it picks it up. So this is really what you gotta look at. Yes,
Inside the terms, are those numbers segmented or are they exact on the terms? Cause I have from a
they're
previous,
segmented or exact.
well, if
Whatever they
it's-
are here is where the degree stops. So
Okay,
at Aries, Jupiter is the first 6 degrees, that rules Aries, and Leo, Saturn is the first 6 degrees. It stops there, the next term picks up.
okay, but there's nothing in between that we can go.
No,
to.
it goes
Sort
here
of,
to there.
kinda?
Here to there, here to
Okay.
there,
Okay,
watch. I could do this. It doesn't make sense, because I'm more in here than I am out there, right?
correct. Okay, just asking.
It's a line, it's a demarcation, came from the Egyptians, by the way.
And the face one is the same way because it's.
They're all
10,
the same
20,
way, they stop on the line,
Okay,
on the line, everything is linear, stops on the line.
so the face is 10, 20, 30 for all of them?
Yeah, that's what it is, it's a decadent, it's a deacon.
Okay.
And that's what it's doing. Stops at 10:01, it's in the other one. It's now in the 20 list.
Oh, so it's 10:01 to 20 then?
It's 9.59, .59, .59, .59, .59, .59, .59, .59 hundredths. It's not quite 10.
Right.
But when it hits 10,
Is there?
It's
it gets into the next one.
Fine, so minutes don't count, good.
Let him think what he wants.
They count. 959 would be in the ninth, in the very first decan. Because only the 959 hasn't gone over to the 10 yet.
No.
So it's up to 959 is where it is. It's in that deacon.
Okay.
It's there. It's there.
Okay.
As soon as it goes into 10, it's in the second deacon. When it's 19, 59, 59, 59, 59, 59, 59, 59, it's still in the 20 deacon.
Okay.
When it hits 20, it goes into the,
Okay. Second.
right in the second, 20.
Third.
Oh, third.
Thank you. So this is where you have to look at this, that's all. Yes, each line has a number, and that number is telling you something. On the exaltations and such, these numbers here are telling you where the deepest, but the whole sign is under exaltation if the sun is in Aries, if the moon is in Taurus. It's all exaltation. Any planet in the exaltation of a sign is exalting its ruler. Any planet, it looks to that. So any planet in Taurus is going to love the moon because it exalts the moon because that's where the moon is most exalted. I got lucky. I got Taurus, Jupiter and Taurus, and it's perfect sextile to the moon. So it exalts that, and the moon loves in Jupiter's sign, loves it on. They both are looking at Mercury, at Venus in the first house. So I don't give a shit for money. I got all I need. If I need some, guess what?
It shows.
It shows up.
Yeah.
It's automatic. So this is where this takes you. This is why you need to know where you are in your life to know how to operate yourself. Because this is the most important. And this is only going to find this in the process. When I look at my Mercury, it's 28 degrees in the sign of Cancer. Well, I have 2 degrees in the sign of Gemini rising. It's the Antitia. So my Mercury goes to the Antitia of its own sign. right on the ascendant. This is where my eidetic memory comes from. It says it right there. That's the Antishir. It's to that back. So I can read anything in Cancer retent. It's a retentive sign, you know, and it digests well. And it's also water where the moon is up there in coordination with the others. So my whole chart integrates in such a way that I have anything I try to do, I do very well. I get records out for being a musician. I get portraits out. I get a movie out that's Miss It If You Can. But I did these things because I knew I could. This is why I did the things. But I did it with all the humiliation I just explained to you. Know your chart, and this is the way. Then when you know your chart and you know how to read charts for other people, this is the way. This is the chart. This is astrology. The other thing is the map where you leave this port and look at that star and sail in that direction until the port comes in sight. It's that simple. Thank you guys. Love you all.